Sarah loved to watch the stars. Every night, she would press her small face against the big window in her family's living pod. The twinkling lights in the dark sky always made her smile. At just 7 years old, Sarah didn't know much about the big universe out there, but she knew it was beautiful. Sarah's home wasn't on Earth. She lived with her parents on Harmony, a human space colony. Harmony was like a giant wheel floating in space. It spun slowly to create gravity, just like on Earth. Sarah had never been to Earth. She was born on Harmony, and it was the only home she knew. Life on Harmony was peaceful. People worked in labs, grew food in big greenhouses, and took care of the machines that kept everyone alive. Sarah's mom was a botanist, working to grow new plants that could thrive in space. Her dad was an engineer, making sure all the colony's systems ran smoothly. Sarah went to school with the other kids on Harmony. They learned about Earth, space, and the importance of working together. Everyone on Harmony knew they had to cooperate to survive so far from their home planet. But Sarah and her family didn't know that danger was coming. Far away, in a part of the galaxy humans had never seen, the Galactic Empire was making plans. The Empire was old and powerful. It ruled over many alien worlds, and it didn't like newcomers. The Empire had been watching Earth and its colonies for a long time. They saw humans as primitive and dangerous. The Empire's leaders decided that humans were spreading too fast. They had to be stopped. On a day like any other, Sarah was in school. She was learning about the solar system when the alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed everywhere. Sarah had never heard these alarms before, but she knew they meant trouble. Her teacher tried to stay calm, but Sarah could see the fear in her eyes. "Children, we need to go to the safety bunkers now. Stay together and don't panic." But it was hard not to panic. Through the school's windows, Sarah saw huge ships appearing in the sky. They were nothing like the human ships she was used to seeing. These were dark and scary, with shapes that hurt her eyes to look at. Suddenly, there was a loud boom. The whole station shook. Sarah fell to the ground, hitting her knee. It hurt, but she was too scared to cry. Her teacher helped her up, and they all ran towards the bunkers. In the hallways, everything was chaos. Grown-ups were running around, shouting things Sarah didn't understand. She heard words like invasion and empire, but they didn't make sense to her. Sarah was swept along with the crowd. In the confusion, she lost sight of her teacher and classmates. She was alone and terrified. "Mom, Dad," she cried out, but no one seemed to hear her over the noise. Another explosion rocked the station. This time, part of the ceiling collapsed. Sarah screamed as debris fell around her. She crawled under a fallen piece of metal, trying to hide. From her hiding spot, Sarah saw strange creatures entering the station. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like shiny metal. They carried weapons Sarah had never seen before. These were soldiers of the Galactic Empire. The alien soldiers moved through the station quickly. They didn't seem to care about the scared humans running away. Sarah watched as they used their weapons to blast doors open and scan rooms with strange devices. Then one of the soldiers spotted Sarah. Its big black eyes locked onto her, and Sarah felt her heart stop. The soldier reached out with one of its 4 arms and grabbed her. Sarah screamed and kicked, but it was no use. The alien was too strong. It lifted her up and spoke into a device on its wrist. Sarah couldn't understand the harsh, clicking language. More soldiers gathered around. They looked at Sarah like she was a curious animal. One of them waved a device over her, making strange noises. Sarah was crying now. "Please," she sobbed, "I want my mom and dad." But the aliens didn't seem to care. They started walking, carrying Sarah with them. As they moved through the damaged station, Sarah saw other humans being rounded up. Some were fighting back, but their weapons seemed useless against the alien technology. The last thing Sarah saw of her home was the big window where she used to watch the stars. But now, instead of peaceful twinkling lights, the view was filled with the massive, dark ships of the Galactic Empire. Sarah didn't know it, but her fate would soon shock the entire human race and change the course of galactic history forever. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human child, captured by the Galactic Empire, had been executed. The Empire called it pest control. Humanity called it murder. On Earth, the reaction was immediate and intense. People poured into the streets of every city, their faces twisted with grief and anger. They carried pictures of Sarah, the little girl they had never met, but whose fate had touched them all. In New York, a sea of candles lit up Central Park. In Tokyo, millions of paper cranes filled the sky. In Lagos, a choir sang a lament that brought tears to every eye. The whole world mourned. But grief soon turned to rage. People demanded action. They wanted justice. They wanted revenge. World leaders gathered in an emergency meeting. The United Nations building in Geneva was surrounded by protesters, all shouting the same thing. Remember Sarah. Destroy the empire. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Presidents, prime ministers, and diplomats from every nation sat around a large table. Their faces were grim, their voices low and angry. "We cannot let this stand," said the U.S. president, her fist slamming on the table. "The empire has gone too far. They've shown us what they think of humanity. Now we must show them what humanity is capable of." The Chinese premier nodded in agreement. "For too long, we have been divided. But now we must unite. The empire threatens not just one nation, but our entire species." One by one, each leader spoke. They all agreed. Earth had to fight back. But how? The Empire's technology was far beyond Earth's. Their ships could destroy entire planets. How could humanity hope to stand against such power? That's when the Indian Prime Minister stood up. He was an old man, known for his calm demeanor. But today, his eyes blazed with determination. "My friends," he said, "I have something to show you." He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a massive spaceship, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was the size of a city, bristling with weapons and defenses. "This," the Prime Minister said, "is Project Dreadnought. We've been working on it in secret for years, hoping we'd never need to use it. But now, the time has come." The room erupted in excited chatter. The Brazilian president leaned forward, her eyes wide. "How many of these can we build?" she asked. The Indian Prime Minister smiled. "With the combined resources of Earth, 700,000. A hush fell over the room. 700,000 dreadnoughts. It was an unimaginable force. The Russian president stood up, his face set in a hard frown. "Building these ships will take everything we have. Every factory, every worker, every resource. Are we ready for such sacrifice?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then, the Nigerian president spoke. "Look at the pictures of Sarah," she said softly. "Look at the faces of our people. They're ready. They're demanding it. The question is, are we?" One by one, the leaders nodded. The decision was made. Earth would go to war. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. All over the planet, factories were converted to build parts for the dreadnoughts. Mines worked around the clock to provide materials. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, improving designs and pushing technology to its limits. People volunteered in droves. They worked long hours, gave up luxuries, all for the war effort. The sense of purpose was unlike anything humanity had ever known. For the first time in history, the entire human race was united in a single goal. In orbit, massive shipyards took shape. Day by day, the fleet grew. Each dreadnought was a marvel of technology, packed with weapons that could shatter planets and defenses that could withstand the fury of a star. As the first ships were completed, a call went out for crew members. Millions volunteered, ready to risk their lives for Earth and for Sarah. Training began immediately, turning civilians into soldiers and pilots. Finally, after months of feverish work, the fleet was ready. 700,000 dreadnoughts hung in Earth's orbit, a sight that filled every human with awe and pride. In Geneva, the world leaders gathered again. This time, their faces were set with grim determination. The U.S. president stood at the head of the table. "The time has come," she said. "We have built our fleet. We have trained our people. Now we take the fight to the Empire. For Earth, for humanity, for Sarah." A cheer went up, echoing through the building and out into the streets. As one, humanity prepared for war. The Galactic Empire had no idea what was coming. The massive shipyards orbiting Earth buzzed with activity. Thousands of workers in spacesuits moved like busy ants, putting the finishing touches on the last of the 700,000 dreadnoughts. These weren't just ships, they were humanity's hope for survival and revenge. Dr. Amelia Chen, the lead scientist of the Dreadnought Initiative, floated through the corridors of the flagship, Vengeance. Her heart raced with excitement and fear. They had done the impossible, but would it be enough? "Status report," she called out to her team spread throughout the ship. "AI systems online and stable," came a voice through her earpiece. "Nanotech defenses active," reported another. "Weapons charged and ready," a third voice confirmed. Amelia allowed herself a small smile. Years of secret work were finally bearing fruit. Each dreadnought was a masterpiece of human ingenuity, far beyond anything they had built before. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral James Wong stood tall, his weathered face reflecting the stars outside. He had seen many battles in his long career, but nothing like what was coming. "Admiral," a young officer approached, tablet in hand. "Final checks are complete. The fleet is ready." James nodded, his eyes never leaving the view of Earth below. "Send the signal. It's time." Across the vast fleet, lights blinked to life. Engines hummed with barely contained power. In the blink of an eye, 700,000 city-sized warships vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. Their destination, the edge of Empire territory. Days later, in a remote star system, space itself seemed to ripple. Suddenly, the human fleet burst into existence. The sheer number of ships blotted out the light of nearby stars. On the bridge of an Imperial patrol ship, alarms blared. The alien captain, a tall, insectoid creature named Zixtal, chittered in shock. "Impossible," Zixtal screeched. "Where did these primitive apes get such a fleet?" Before the Imperial ship could react, a single human dreadnought moved forward. It was time to test their new weapons. Admiral Wong's voice crackled over the comms. "This is for Sarah," he said softly. Then louder, "Fire." A beam of pure energy lanced out from the dreadnought, slicing through the Imperial ship like it was made of paper. In seconds, the once mighty vessel was nothing but floating debris. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. Their weapons worked even better than they had hoped. But there was no time to celebrate. This was just the beginning. "All ships, move out," Admiral Wong commanded. "Operation Vengeance is now in full effect." The human fleet surged forward, spreading out across Imperial space. They had the element of surprise, and they intended to use it. Planets that had never known fear now trembled as human dreadnoughts appeared in their skies. Imperial fleets scrambled to respond, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number and power of the human ships. On the Imperial capital world of Zalthora, Emperor Vexcor received the news with disbelief. "How is this possible?" The Emperor roared, his tentacles writhing in agitation. These humans were nothing but pests. How did they build such a fleet in secret? His advisors cowered before him, none daring to speak. "Mobilize everything we have," Vexcor commanded. "Crush these upstart apes before they can do any real damage." But it was already too late. Human dreadnoughts were tearing through Imperial defenses across a dozen star systems. Advanced AI systems predicted enemy movements before they happened. Nanotech shields absorbed energy weapons that would have vaporized older ships. And at the heart of each battle was the memory of a little girl named Sarah. Her face was painted on the side of every dreadnought, a constant reminder of why they fought. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly in her lab aboard the Vengeance, analyzing data from each engagement. "The nanotech is adapting even faster than we hoped," she reported to Admiral Wong. "Each battle makes our ships stronger." Wong nodded grimly. "Good. We'll need every advantage." "This is just the beginning, Doctor. The Empire is vast, and they won't go down without a fight." As if to prove his point, alerts blared across the ship. A massive Imperial fleet had just dropped out of hyperspace nearby. Thousands of ships, led by a vessel that dwarfed even the human Dreadnoughts. "All hands to battle stations," Wong's voice rang out across the fleet. "This is what we've prepared for. Remember Sarah. Remember Earth. Let's show the Empire what happens when they mess with humanity." As the two fleets closed in, the true test of humanity's dreadnoughts was about to begin. The galaxy held its breath, knowing that history was about to be made. The vastness of space erupted into a dazzling display of destruction. Human dreadnoughts clashed with the Imperial fleet in a battle that would be remembered for centuries. Admiral Wong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his face illuminated by the flashes of weapon fire. "Target their flagship," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The Vengeance's main cannon charged, drawing power from its massive reactors. With a blinding flash, it fired. The beam of energy crossed the space between the fleets in an instant, slamming into the Imperial flagship's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a silent explosion, the Imperial ship's defenses collapsed. The beam cut through the ship like a hot knife through butter, splitting it in two. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, the Empire's greatest ship, destroyed in seconds. But the battle was far from over. Thousands of Imperial ships still filled the sky, their weapons blazing. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, our nanotech shields are adapting. They're getting stronger with each hit." Wong allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Push forward. Don't let up." The human dreadnoughts moved as one, their formation perfect. Each ship was guided by advanced AI, reacting faster than any human could. They weaved through enemy fire, returning it tenfold. Imperial ships exploded left and right, unable to withstand the humans' advanced weapons. But they fought on, driven by fear of their Emperor's wrath. On the Imperial command ship, now hastily assuming control, General Zexkal watched in horror. "Impossible," he muttered, his four eyes wide with disbelief. "How can these primitives be so strong?" An aide approached, trembling. "Sir, we've lost half our fleet. What are your orders?" Zexkal hesitated. Retreat meant certain death at the Emperor's hands, but staying meant death by human weapons. We must regroup. Send the signal. All ships, fall back to Outpost Zeta 9. As the Imperial fleet began to retreat, the human ships gave chase. But Admiral Wong held up his hand. "Let them go," he said. "We've made our point. Now we follow them home." The human fleet regrouped, repairing what little damage they had taken. Dr. Chen's team worked tirelessly, analyzing data from the battle. "It's incredible," she told Wong, her eyes shining with excitement. "Our ships are learning, evolving. The next battle will be even easier." Wong nodded, but his eyes were serious. "We can't get overconfident, Doctor. This was just one fleet. The Empire has many more." As if to prove his point, a transmission came through. It was from Earth. The face of the United Earth President appeared on screen. "Admiral, congratulations on your victory. But we have disturbing news. The Empire has launched attacks on our outer colonies. They're targeting civilians." Wong's fists clenched. "They're retaliating against the weak because they can't beat us in a fair fight," he growled. The President nodded grimly. "Your new orders are to split your fleet. Half will continue the offensive. The other half will return to protect our people." "Understood, Madam President," Wong replied. He turned to his crew. "You heard her. Let's move out." As the fleet divided, Wong couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and worry. They had won their first major battle, but the war was far from over. In the depths of space, the retreating Imperial fleet limped towards Outpost Zeta 9. General Zexkull dreaded facing the Emperor, but he had no choice. As soon as they dropped out of hyperspace, a transmission came through. Emperor Vexkor's face filled the screen, his tentacles writhing with rage. "You dare retreat," the Emperor roared. "You let these human vermin defeat our greatest fleet." Zexkull fell to his knees. "My Emperor, their technology. It's beyond anything we've seen. We need time to—" "Silence," Vexkor interrupted. "I will not accept excuses. You will take what's left of your fleet, and you will crush these humans. Destroy their colonies. Show them the price of defying the Empire. And if you fail again, don't bother coming back." The transmission cut off, leaving Zexkull trembling. He turned to his officers. "You heard the Emperor. Set course for the nearest human colony. This time, we show no mercy." As both fleets moved towards their next confrontations, the galaxy held its breath. The war between humanity and the Empire had only just begun, and its outcome would shape the fate of countless worlds. The sky over New Eden, Earth's largest off-world colony, was on fire. Imperial ships rained destruction from above, their weapons turning cities to ash. Millions of colonists ran for their lives, desperately seeking shelter. Among the chaos, a small girl clutched her teddy bear, tears streaming down her face. She looked just like Sarah. A nearby soldier saw her and felt his heart break. "This is why we fight," he muttered, scooping up the child and running for the nearest bunker. In orbit, Admiral Wong's voice boomed across the comms of the human defense fleet. "Protect the civilians at all costs. Don't let a single Imperial ship through." The battle was fierce. Human dreadnoughts clashed with Imperial destroyers, filling space with explosions and debris. Despite being outnumbered, the human ships fought with a fury born of desperation. They knew what would happen if they failed. On the Imperial command ship, General Zexkull watched with grim satisfaction. "See how they struggle," he growled to his officers. "The Emperor will be pleased when we crush this pathetic colony." But the tide was about to turn. Far across the galaxy, Dr. Chen was putting the finishing touches on humanity's secret weapon. She stood in a massive hangar, surrounded by thousands of small, sleek objects. "Are you sure about this, Doctor?" a nervous assistant asked. Chen nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We have no choice. Upload the command sequences. It's time to unleash the swarm." Back at New Eden, the human defenders were being pushed to their limit. Admiral Wong gritted his teeth as another dreadnought exploded. "We can't hold out much longer," he growled. Suddenly, alarms blared across both fleets. Thousands of small objects had just dropped out of hyperspace. They were each about the size of a car, shaped like arrowheads. "What are those?" Zexkull demanded, his 4 eyes wide with confusion. He got his answer a moment later. The objects swarmed towards the Imperial ships, moving faster than anything they'd ever seen. Where they touched, Imperial hulls simply disappeared. "Nanites," a human officer exclaimed. Dr. Chen did it. The swarm tore through the Imperial fleet like locusts through a wheat field. Massive battleships were reduced to clouds of dust in seconds. Fighters tried to escape, only to be engulfed and erased from existence. Zexkull watched in horror as his fleet vanished around him. "Retreat," he screamed. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. The swarm enveloped his command ship, eating through layers of armor and shielding like they weren't even there. The last thing Zexkull saw was a wave of gray washing over the bridge. In moments, the entire Imperial attack force was gone, leaving only the stunned human defenders and the quietly floating swarm. Admiral Wong let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "By all that's holy," he whispered, "what have we created?" The answer came from Dr. Chen herself, her face appearing on the main view screen. "Admiral, I see the swarm performed as expected. How do you like our new toys? Wong shook his head in disbelief. They're incredible, Doctor, but also terrifying. Are we sure we can control them? Chen's face grew serious. Absolutely. They respond only to human commands, and they've just turned the tide of this war. As if to prove her point, reports started flooding in from across human space. The swarm had hit every Imperial attack force simultaneously. In a single stroke, humanity had destroyed a significant portion of the Empire's military might. On Earth, the United Earth President addressed a tense world. "My fellow humans," she said, her voice firm. "Today, we have shown the Empire the true cost of underestimating humanity. But this is not the end. This is where we take the fight to them." Cheers erupted in every city on Earth and its colonies. For the first time since the war began, hope blossomed in human hearts. But in the depths of Imperial space, Emperor Vexcor received the news of the defeat with cold fury. His tentacles writhed as he turned to his most trusted scientists. "Find a way to stop these nanites," he hissed, "and prepare our planet killers. If we can't defeat the humans, we'll destroy every world they hold dear." The war had entered a new phase, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The vast emptiness of space was shattered by the arrival of the human fleet. 700,000 dreadnoughts, accompanied by countless smaller ships and swarms of nanites, dropped out of hyperspace near the heart of the Galactic Empire. Admiral Wong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his face set in grim determination. "This is it," he said to his crew. "The final push. For Earth, for humanity, and for Sarah." Across the fleet, soldiers and pilots prepared for battle. Many had photos of Sarah or their own loved ones taped to their consoles. They knew what they were fighting for. But the Empire was ready for them. As the humans approached, millions of Imperial ships appeared, surrounding a massive space station that dwarfed even the largest dreadnoughts. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, that station. It's not just a fortress. Our scans show it's some kind of superweapon." Before Wong could respond, a blinding beam of energy shot out from the station. It struck a nearby star, and to everyone's horror, the star began to collapse. "By all that's holy," Wong whispered, "they're using stars as weapons." The Emperor's face appeared on every screen across both fleets. His tentacles writhed with malicious glee. "Foolish humans," he sneered. "Did you think we would be so easy to defeat? Surrender now, or watch as we destroy every star in your empire." For a moment, silence fell across the human fleet. Then, a small voice spoke up. It was the little girl from New Eden, the one who looked like Sarah. Someone had given her a comlink. "We won't give up," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "Sarah wouldn't want us to." Her words sparked a fire in every human heart. Cheers erupted across the fleet. "You heard her," Wong said, his voice full of pride. "All ships, attack. Swarm, target that station." The space between the fleets erupted into chaos. Dreadnoughts exchanged fire with Imperial battleships. Fighters darted between larger ships, dogfighting in the debris of destroyed vessels. And through it all, the swarm moved. Trillions of nanites flowed towards the Imperial superweapon, undeterred by its powerful shields. On the station, Emperor Vexcor watched in growing panic as the swarm approached. "Stop them," he screeched at his scientists. "Use the Star Killer on their fleet." The station's weapon charged again, aiming at the star nearest to the human fleet. But at the last second, a group of dreadnoughts moved into its path, sacrificing themselves to save their comrades. Wong watched, tears in his eyes, as the brave ships were vaporized. "Their sacrifice won't be in vain," he vowed. "All ships, concentrate fire on the station's main weapon." As the battle raged, the swarm finally reached the station. Imperial defenses proved useless against the microscopic invaders. Inch by inch, the massive structure began to dissolve. Vexcor's eyes widened in terror as the swarm breached the throne room. "No," he screamed. "I am the Emperor. I cannot be defeated by mere apes." Those were his last words before the nanites reached him. As the station crumbled, the Imperial fleet fell into disarray. Without their leader and their superweapon, their will to fight evaporated. They're retreating. Chen's excited voice came over the comms. "Admiral, we've won." But Wang's face remained serious. "Not yet," he said. "We have them on the run. But now we face the hardest choice of all." He turned to his command staff. "We have the power to wipe out the Empire completely, to ensure they can never threaten us again." He paused, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. "But if we do, are we any better than them?" The bridge fell silent as everyone contemplated the question. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, resting on the choice of those who had fought so hard for revenge. In the silence, the image of Sarah seemed to watch them all, her innocent eyes asking the simple question, what would she want them to do? The silence on the bridge of the Vengeance was heavy with the weight of history. Admiral Wang looked at the faces of his crew, seeing the same conflict in their eyes that he felt in his heart. Finally, he spoke. "We came here for justice, not genocide. Sarah wouldn't want us to become monsters." He took a deep breath. "All ships, stand down. The swarm is to disengage and return to base." A collective sigh of relief swept through the fleet. They had won, and they had kept their humanity. In the days that followed, the remnants of the Empire surrendered. Without their emperor and most of their military might, they had no choice. A month later, representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered on a neutral planet. Humans, the ex-imperial races, and dozens of others who had been oppressed by the Empire sat together in a grand hall. Dr. Chen stood at the podium, her voice strong and clear. "Today, we forge a new path, not as conquerors, but as equals. We propose the formation of a galactic council where all species have a voice." Murmurs of approval spread through the crowd. Even former Imperial citizens nodded, relieved that they would not face the same cruelty they had once inflicted on others. As the details of the new galactic government were hammered out, Earth continued to heal. The scars of war would take time to fade, but already new hope was blossoming. In a small park in what was once New Eden Colony, a statue was unveiled. It showed Sarah, the little girl whose fate had sparked the war, but she wasn't alone. Next to her stood representatives of every species in the galaxy, all holding hands. Admiral Wang, now retired, stood before the statue, tears in his eyes. A small hand slipped into his. It was the girl from the battle, the one who had reminded them all of Sarah. "Is it really over?" she asked, looking up at him with wide eyes. Wang smiled gently. "The war is over, little one, but our journey is just beginning." As if to emphasize his words, a ship streaked across the sky. It was the first of the new exploration vessels, built from converted dreadnoughts. Humanity, along with their new allies, was reaching out to the stars not in war, but in peace. Back on Earth, in the halls of the newly formed United Galactic Government, the President of Earth addressed the Assembly. "We have survived our trial by fire," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We have faced our darkest hour and emerged stronger. But let us never forget the cost." On screens around her, images of the war's victims played. Sarah's face appeared, alongside countless others who had given their lives. "In their memory," the President continued, "we will build a better galaxy, one of justice, of peace, and of hope." The Assembly erupted in applause. Among the cheering crowd, a group of former Imperial citizens stood, their faces a mix of shame and determination. They, too, had learned from the war's horrors. As the applause died down, Dr. Chen approached the podium. "We have one final announcement," she said. "Our scientists have made a breakthrough. The technology we developed for war can be repurposed. We can now terraform barren planets, heal dying stars, even bring life to dead worlds." A sense of awe fell over the Assembly. The possibilities were endless. In the years that followed, the galaxy flourished. Former enemies worked side by side to rebuild and explore. The swarm, once a weapon of war, now seeded life on distant planets. And on every world, in every city, a small memorial stood, a reminder of a little girl named Sarah, whose tragic fate had led to a new era of peace and cooperation. As starships set out to explore the unknown reaches of the universe, they carried with them the most important lesson of the war. That compassion, even in the face of cruelty, was the truest strength of all. The galaxy had been forged anew, not by the fires of vengeance, but by the unbreakable spirit of hope. And somewhere, perhaps, Sarah was smiling.